Happy Vaisakhi, everyone. Happy Vaisakhi, Bhakti.
Thank you, Anu. Happy Vaisakhi to you and to everyone who's joined in.
Great. So we are doing a pre-recording because you're where? You're in Hong Kong, right?
Yes, absolutely. In Hong Kong. 12 hours ahead of you guys.
Yeah. So I will basically introduce you, Bhakti, and then you can take it away from there. I will do a quick video of your book, Amma Take Me to Golden Temple. And then we'll just do a quick Q&A because I think there are some questions that our kids would like to ask. So I have a few questions that I'll ask you. And then we would love to hear from your book. I personally have been reading your books to my kids since they were very little. We have the entire Amma Tell Me series. And now we have the entire Amma Take Me series.
Fantastic.
And my kids, it's a staple. Any festival, I do read it. I do read your books, Diwali, Holi. Whenever I go to a museum or the library, that is a staple book that I read just because I've been reading it to my kids for such a long time. So I am so excited about this. I'll do a quick intro and then let's get into the Q&A.
Sure.
So Bhakti Mathur took to writing in 2010 when she created the popular Amma Tell Me series for children's picture books about Indian festivals and mythology. This series has now grown to 12 books. Bhakti is currently working on a new series, as I mentioned, Amma Take Me, in collaboration with Puffin Books and Penguin Random House India. The new series introduces children to major Indian faiths through their important places of worship, and the series has 4 books to date: Golden Temple in Amritsar, Sri Venkateshwara Temple in Tirupati, and Dargah of Salim Chisti in Fatehpur Sikri, and on Sai Baba of Shirdi. So I'll do the quick video on Golden Temple and then we'll do our Q&A. So please bear with me as I'm sharing my screen via Zoom. Can you see my screen, Bhakti?
Yes, I can see it well.
Or making some cake for mother, which she doesn't eat.
Okay, sorry about that. So I just have a couple of questions. Firstly, Bhakti, can you clarify the age groups for the 2 series of books that you have? Amma Take Me and Amma Tell Me.
But before coming to that, thank you, Anu, for playing that video. It brings back memories of my visiting Golden Temple with the 2 kids. And also really thank you and, the Culture Tree and the Indian Consulate for giving me this chance to be able to talk to you and hopefully to be able to reach out to readers. It's really wonderful. Writing is so solitary that it's really nice to get an opportunity to interact. So thank you for that. On the ages,
Yep.
As you're probably aware, I started the Amma Tell Me series for my 2 kids who were 3 and 2 at that point of time. This was 2010. And so this is really from 3 to 8 years age group. And the Amma Take Me series is, more like a sort of a chapter book, and it's for older children who can read themselves. And I would say a good age range for that is 8 to 12 years. So, kids who've just started going to middle school.
Yep. I read The Golden Temple to my boys last year, and my boys are now ages 8 and 11, and we read it as, the three of us read it together.
Fantastic.
And it was very relatable to my younger one also, who at that time was 6.5. So
Okay.
I think it can age down a little bit if you're reading with your child, but
Yes, if you're reading to your child, absolutely it can.
yeah.
And, the idea behind the series was because books on history while growing up, at least I found them quite boring and didactic or anything to do with religion. So when Penguin came up with this idea, the whole idea behind the initiative was to make it fun and interesting. So
Yeah.
I've traveled to all these places with my children, and the question and answers that you read, because the book is written as a dialogue between a mother and her two children, are the questions which my two kids actually asked me.
That's
So the endeavor has really been to, make it exciting and fun for kids, and at the same time introduce them to different faiths.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the questions a child submitted was, how did you think about writing the two series? So what was the inspiration? I mean, you said partially it was your kids,
Yes.
but
Yes.
elaborate a little more.
Yes, so that's a good question. So when I grew up, as you know, when we grew up, there was no iPad and there were no iPhones. So when I came back home from school, my mother used to work. I used to have a nanny who would take care of me, and he was a male actually. So I don't know if nanny is the right word, but he was, he would take care of me, and he couldn't read, he couldn't write. His name was Bhagwan, but he was the best storyteller in the whole world. So imagine, this is for the kids, having like a 2-hour storytelling session every day. So he would tell me stories from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and I think that's what really got me interested in mythology. And when both my children were born and I was in Hong Kong, I really wanted to share with them the festivals that I grew up celebrating and the stories that I really grew up on.
Yeah.
And so that was the inspiration for Amma Tell Me. And I remember Holi was around the corner. It was November 2010, and I was sitting with my husband, and I said, I really can't find a book on Holi the way I would like to tell the kids the story. And, I really feel like writing one. And he said, just do it. It sounded like a Nike ad at that point, but, it really encouraged me to start. And so that's how this journey began.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think for the children, I would encourage them to reach out to their grandparents, whether they're here or in India, because that storytelling has got so much richness. So yeah, all the kids who are listening to this or watching this video, definitely, reach out to people that are around you to know a little more about your heritage and about so much richness in the mythology that we have from India or from any other country.
That's true. And the second series, the Amma Take Me series, was an idea which came forward by Penguin. And the timing was right for me, because at that point, my children from their school, or as a part of their school curriculum, they'd started visiting synagogues, temples, and mosques in Hong Kong. And they had lots of questions about different religions, faiths, what are the differences. And, I thought this would be a good way to take them around, show them different places and religions and answer their questions. And I think one of the things that hopefully they've been able to imbibe by visiting these places is that really all religions say the same thing. Right. About love and generosity. And, one thing that has really stayed with me is that the Dalai Lama was once asked, what is your religion? And he said, my religion is kindness. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what it really comes down to.
Yep, yep. And, I'm very excited because we are doing these virtual videos, there are some festivals the culture tree has never celebrated, like Vaisakhi. So I'm so excited because now we are doing the celebration.
Yes. Fantastic.
And one other question that a child asked me was, what are your memories from when you visited Golden Temple, which is this book is based on your trip to Golden Temple. So if you can tell us a little bit about those memories and who you went with, and how old, if you were a child, how old you were.
So the first time I visited Golden Temple once, and it was before writing this book, which was 2016. Yep. I went with my husband and my two kids, and at that time they were 8 and 6.
Yeah.
So they were quite rowdy, not that they're any different right now. But this is a very interesting question, because one of the things I remember distinctly is that first when we went outside the compound, we had to give our shoes at a counter.
Yeah.
And there was a person who was taking our shoes and he was wiping the counter clean. And so my kids were very curious why he was doing that. And then, of course, we entered the Golden Temple, and it's really like this beautiful sort of golden structure coming out of the lake, the Amrit Sarovar. So the beauty, even for my 8 and 6-year-old, they were just awestruck. It really takes you in. The third thing I noticed was the quietness of the place, and that my boys were also very quiet, and we spent a fair amount of time just sitting there and just looking at the lake, looking at the people. And they also noticed that there were a lot of people helping. So you'd see somebody who's cleaning the lake, there was somebody cleaning the walkway, the walking path around. And that led us to this whole conversation about seva, that Guru Nanak started, about selfless service. So that's one of the things that stayed with me really strongly. The other thing, of course, was the langar, which the kids loved. The third thing I noticed was that there was Gurbani that was playing all through. And even though my children don't understand Gurmukhi or Punjabi, but they were so taken in by the music. They were quiet and they just seemed so much at peace. And while researching for the book, I read that, where Harmandir Sahib is, where the Golden Temple is, that used to be a forest where Guru Nanak used to meditate. And before him, the Buddha is said to have meditated there. So I think just the land has such positive energies and vibrations. Mm-hmm. So it was really very, very peaceful.
Right. I went to Golden Temple when I was 8 or 9 years old. My father was in the Indian Army and he was posted there. And I have distinct, beautiful memories of going to the Golden Temple with my father and my 2 sisters. And the things that stood out was how this golden structure emerged from the lake. It was almost like a lotus coming out of the water all of a sudden, and it was just spectacular. And I think langar was, the other aspect that was just spectacular. And you saw everyone doing seva, and just the food was so delicious. So I have very, very fond memories of the Golden Temple. One last question, and then we would love to hear from the book. But what, as a child, what did you like reading, and how much did you read? And what type of books did you read?
So my mother was a librarian, and I think that helped because she would always be reading to me. And one of my fondest and first memories is sitting on a lap and her reading Dr. Seuss to me.
Yeah.
And that's also one of the reasons, because I heard and then later on read so much of Dr. Seuss that when I thought of the Amma Tell Me series, I thought of writing it in rhyme. Of course, I made things much harder for myself, which I realized later. But I think reading Dr. Seuss was definitely, something that influenced my writing in rhyme for the Amma Tell Me series. So he was a clear favorite. And of course, as I grew up, it was Enid Blyton, Nancy Drew, then came Agatha Christie, Sherlock Holmes. So these were some of the writers that I really enjoyed reading as a child. And because my mother used to work, very often in summer holidays, she would leave me at the library to spend the day. I guess libraries are inexpensive and convenient babysitters. So, it was like an open field. And that's where really I developed the love of reading.
Yeah, that's great. So we would love to hear you read the book. Any passage that you think is appropriate for Vaisakhi?
Yes. So, Vaisakhi is very special to Sikhs because you're probably aware that it was on the day of Vaisakhi in the year 1699 that Guru Gobind Singh actually requested all his followers to collect at Anandpur, which is where he was staying at the time. And the reason for this is that he wanted to form the Khalsa, which is a group of the pure ones. That's what Khalsa means on that day. And you must be familiar that, huge crowd of thousands and thousands of people had collected to hear the beloved Guru speak. And when he came on stage, he actually said that who here is ready to give their life for the Guru? And the story goes that a hush fell on the crowd because people couldn't believe that a guru is asking someone to die for them. And there was one man who really believed in him and trusted him and said, I'm willing to die for you. So he said, okay, you come at the back. And he kind of sort of took him in a tent at the back, and all they heard was a swish of the sword and a huge thud. So they just assumed the worst, and they thought, the guru has killed him, and there was, sort of shock, and some people started leaving out of fear. And then he came, and then he said, who else here is willing to give their life for me? And a second person said, I will. And so this happened 5 times. And then finally, the crowd was really fearful. But then Guru Gobind Singh came out with those 5 people, and they were all dressed in these golden robes. And he said, this was a test of, how much faith you have in me. And these are my Panch Pyare. He called them, my 5 beloved who will form the Khalsa. So I have the book here, and I'm just going to read, one part which I found really interesting while researching it. And this is when he says that then Guru Gobind Rai said, this was a test of your courage. I am blessed to have found 5 true Sikhs. These are my 5 beloved, my Panch Pyare. They are the first members of the Khalsa, my new community of the pure. And then they talk about how he brought out an iron bowl, and then how he baptized them. So Amma is telling the story to her 2 boys, Shiv and Veer. And then Shiv says, what does baptize mean, Amma? Shiv. It means to be reborn, said Amma. The 5 followers belonged to different Hindu castes. The baptism signified a rebirth, showing that the 5 had renounced their caste and occupation in order to become soldiers. The Guru asked them to drink from one bowl to signify that they were now part of a casteless community. And this is what I really like here. The whole idea that everybody is equal. It's a casteless community. No one is superior. No one is inferior. And he says, this is the Khalsa where everyone is equal. And then the Guru asked to be baptized by them. So the 5 looked puzzled and said, how can we baptize you? You are our Guru. And then he replied, in the Khalsa, all men are equal. The Guru said, smiling, even the Guru and the disciple. So, these are really advanced thoughts.
Yep.
And these are fantastic thoughts that we all are children of God, and we all are equal. And the fact that the Guru is asking the disciples to baptize him,
right,
to show that. So I thought this was really special.
Right.
To me is really special. And of course, in the end, I asked the kids, so who is your favorite Guru? Because we had spoken about from Guru Nanak to Guru Gobind Singh. And so my younger one, who was feeling hungry at the time, he's like, Guru Nanak, because he started the langar and I'm hungry. Yeah. And my older one, who loves cricket, he said Guru Gobind Singh, because he was a sportsman. Not many people know, but Guru Gobind Singh was a great sportsman. Right. So, I really hope, my endeavor is that parents who want to go to the Golden Temple, it would be, for me, I think my dream would come true if they read this book and visit the places with their children and engage in their own conversations and start their own journeys and their own talks about different faiths. I think, I would have done a little bit as an author.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. I would love it if you can read another passage, any of your favorite passage. Doesn't have to be related to Vaisakhi, that you think, virtually, I think the kids will gain out of the most. And if you can also show us a visual, that would be great.
Yes, of course. So I'm going to read a bit from the beginning. And this is the scene where, my kids and me, we all were really mesmerized. And my husband, all 4 of us, it was all, our first time to the Golden Temple. I'm showing the visual here of what it looked like, really the Golden Temple. You can see it really looks like it's emerging, from the lake. So I'm going to read a page. So it was well before the sun woke up. Amma and the 2 boys walked barefoot in the darkness across the vast courtyard. Amma cajoled the children with quiet words of encouragement. Just a little bit more, Shiv, and a few steps later, we are almost there, Veer. The boys, half asleep and too tired to protest, stumbled along, holding on tightly to Amma's hands. What had seemed like a great idea the evening before, getting up early to meet a 400-year-old guru who lived in a floating temple made of gold, wasn't looking so grand now. So this is what I told them, that we're going to meet a 400-year-old guru, just to get them interested. Right. Here we are, announced Amma. They had finally reached the magnificent arched gateway that led to the temple complex. The boys got a jolt as they stepped into the shallow pool of cold water meant to cleanse one's feet before entering the holy grounds beyond. Shiv rubbed his eyes to check that he still wasn't still warm in his bed dreaming, a Sikh man with a long black beard and wearing a blue tunic stood guard, towering over them, holding a tall spear in one hand. "Veer, look!" Shiv whispered loudly. His brother was doing exactly that, staring at the impressive figure of the guard as he too rubbed the sleep from his eyes. White teeth peeked from under the guard's thick mustache as he offered a broad, welcoming smile to the boys. They smiled back, relieved at the display of friendliness. And then it's how they enter. It says they stopped straight ahead in the middle of a large lake, brilliantly lit and bright against the backdrop of the dark sky stood an elegant domed square structure seemingly carved out of solid gold. There it was, the Golden Temple of Amritsar. Lost for words, the three took in the wondrous sight for a few long moments. A flock of pigeons flew off the perch atop the shiny dome of the temple, and the sound of flapping wings broke their trance. Amma, Shiv and Veer started walking down a flight of steps, taking in the magnificent surroundings. I don't know how much time we have, but
No, it's beautiful.
This
It's beautiful. Just when we finished reading the Golden Temple book, I and my two boys, we during family dinner we were talking about places to travel, like we always do. We travel twice a year, typically. And we were talking, and my husband asked, and the kids said they want to go to the Golden Temple. So it did inspire them immediately. And it's actually a place that I would love my kids to go to. And thank you so much for writing these books, because it's basically, it helps the parent in encouraging and also just telling the kids about a different place that has not been addressed. So thank you so much, Bhakti.
Thank you, Anu, for giving me this chance. Thank you. Happy Vaisakhi to you and to all our listeners.
Thank you.
Thank you.